You're listening to Rebel Spirituality with me, Sam Goldfinch. Here's the truth. Wisdom doesn't follow rules. So each week we're going to explore what it means to wake up your way so you can live a more peaceful, creative and inspired life no matter your circumstances. It's time to blaze your unique path to truth. Hey Rebel friends. Right. This week's podcast is called The Secret to Happiness. It's a biggie, and I get it. I know that you probably read a million books that promise the secret to happiness, or you might be thinking, like, we can fit this into 5 to 8 minutes or something like that. I understand, like I've been there. But I want to just cover something that, well, I wrote a note on Substack the other day, and thank you for anyone who supports me over there. I really appreciate that. But I wrote a note on Substack the other day, and I realized that there's a whole world in it. It contains so much of my quote-unquote spiritual path, and I don't really relate to it as a path anymore. I see that I was always exactly where I needed to be, so it looked like a path until it didn't, and then suddenly I realized that I was always home. And that's at the center of this share, actually. At the center of this is that if it's true that it's subtractive, if it's true that at the core of our being, there is a source of contentment, peace, and love and well-being. If it's true that those things bubble up when we're not caught up in our insecure thinking, and I'm going to assert that that is the case, that's symptomatic of us recognizing the truth of who and what we really are before and beyond our psychology, symptomatic of that peace, contentment, well-being, these energy states, these states of being show up in our body-mind. And it can be different depending on the day or wherever we happen to find ourselves. But they're symptomatic of that recognition. They're not symptomatic of the amount of stuff that we collect in the world or any of that kind of stuff or, many of the things that we get told. Given that that's true, what if it's a lot more simple than it's looked? So let me read this short note I wrote the other day. I said, if you find someone living from contentment, resilience and love, I can guarantee you one thing. They don't take their thinking all that seriously. If you find someone living with the weight of the world on their shoulders, I can guarantee you something. They take their thinking very seriously. What's the moral of the story? Don't take your thinking so seriously. And look, I get it. You would have heard me say on this podcast many times, this is about realizing it's not that serious. It's not that deep, man. We don't have to take our thinking so seriously. But I totally understand that it doesn't sometimes look that simple until it does. Like for me, for years and years and years, every time I had an insecure thought, I believed in it. Just by the fact that I had one. I didn't realize that there was another option. I didn't realize that it was safe, if you like, to look in a different direction. And the mind also, if it's used to us kind of paying attention to it. This is all metaphor, but if the mind is used to us paying attention to its kind of the old tracks that it plays all the time, the sticky thoughts, the looping thoughts that it's been playing for a while, it gets wound up if we're not looking. It sometimes the message it's giving us is, no, you really do need to pay attention. It really is very important. You do need to take me seriously. And then if we look away from that, it can get louder for a minute. It can say, you're not paying attention to me. You realize that things are going to go wrong if you don't. You don't take me for granted. All the kind of stuff. It flares up. It can kick off. And that's just something to notice. That's just something to know. And what if you don't really have to go in there? What if you really don't have to take it so seriously? What if what I read out is a huge part of it? Because I don't use that word lightly, guarantee. But I guarantee you if you find someone that's living from contentment, resilience and love, I guarantee you that they don't take their thinking that seriously. And I guarantee you that if you find someone who's living with the weight of the world on their shoulders, they take their thinking very seriously. And just go and observe that. See if that's true for you. See if that's true for other people in your life. For some reason, even if people aren't quote unquote spiritual or interpersonal development, some people, they just know not to take their thinking so seriously. They're like, why would I do that? That makes me feel horrible. Like if I hang out in that thought, if I hang out with that thought, if I believe in that thought or that story, it doesn't make me feel good. And some people intuitively just know. It's like, why would I hold on to this hot coal? I'm just going to put it down. I was not one of those people for whatever reason. It was part of the unfolding for me that I took my thinking very seriously so that I could get burnt by that hot coal, if you like, and wake up. And wake up. And the thing is, when we look away from all of that stuff, those thoughts that we've believed in, those stories, those whatever those stories are, whether they're stories of feeling like a victim, whether they're stories of feeling like the world is out to get us, whether they're not enough deficiency stories, it'll be different depending on our upbringing, depending on what we've learnt along the way. What we miss out on is what's available right here, which is inspiration, wisdom, intuition. And sometimes it's just the knowing that it's safe to look away from that stuff and just to see what shows up in the moment. I wrote a piece called, I think it was called Practical Magic, maybe more than a year or so ago, where I was talking about the magic that shows up when we're not so caught up in the idea that we need all of those thoughts or that we need to pay so much attention to that stuff. Like, what if it's just noise? What if it's just kind of stuff that's playing out over the top, like a commentary that's kind of just buzzing around in your head? And what if we do just fine if we don't pay attention to that? In my experience, we're moved by life. That's actually what's happening. Life is always moving. The idea that the thoughts in our head is the thing that's moving life is the thing that is very powerful to call into question. My assertion is it doesn't work like that. And if we investigate, we can find that out. And so there's a wealth of just wisdom and connection and joy and contentment that happens and that just shows up. It's not a job. It's not something we have to cultivate. It's something that shows up as we take the stories and the thoughts of insecurity or fear or judgment or whatever they might be. It's all insecurity one way or another. All of that stuff, as we take it less seriously, those things that I was talking about, resilience, love, peace, contentment, clarity, they bubble up. Not because, just because that's you, just because they're, as I say, they're aspects of the recognition of who we are. So we don't want to chase those things. We don't have to turn those things into a goal. As soon as we turn those things into a goal, we get thinking about them, and then we feel that thinking, and then it feels like it's eluding us and it's disappeared again. But if we just look away from that stuff and come deep and just come into presence, just recognize what's here in this moment. Recognize what's here beyond psychology, as Sid Banks used to say. We find ourselves home to the moment. There's no path there. There's nothing to do. And so, what if it really is more simple than we think? What if the secret to happiness, peace, and contentment and that kind of stuff, it's more like something that we haven't realized, that it's not something that we're going to attain or gain through effort. It's something that's inherently ours. It's something that you are. It's something that shows up as you recognize that. And then from that space, you can create, play, gain whatever you want to in the world of form, but you won't be confused about what it can and can't give you. And that's a really different world to inhabit. Right. I think that's it. I'd love to see you over on Substack. Thank you for those who support me over there. I do lots of writing on there and release kind of little notes and things like that. I'd really appreciate your support. So the links for that are in the show notes. And other than that, I hope you have a beautiful day. I'll see you soon.